What's up, world? I'm Cameron McKinney, and this is Pop Culture Spotlight, a podcast about the movie Superman. Here's a quick synopsis. Billionaire Lex Luthor attempts to turn the world against Superman. The film stars David Corensweat, Rachel Brosnahan, Nicholas Hoult, Skylar Gassando, Eddie Gathegi, Nathan Fillion, Isabella Merced, Anthony Carrigan, and Wendell Pierce. Standout performances. Prior to Superman, I've seen David Corensweat in the Netflix series Holut playing Jack Costello, an aspiring actor. He's very funny on that show. And in the movies Pearl, the second film of the Ty West X trilogy, playing a projectionist, and Twisters as Scott. Clark Kent will be most people's introduction to this actor, and it's a very good intro. He's able to work within the many tones of the film Superman. Some moments ask him to be sincere, some ask him to be funny and zany. There's a lightheartedness that I haven't seen from other adaptations of the character that I really enjoyed. And the other thing that really stands out is the fact that he's playing a Superman who is just trying to figure things out. One of the best things about Matt Reeves is the Batman is that the Bruce Wayne that Robert Pattinson is playing is not a super experienced one. He's not polished. And I had that same feeling towards David Corensweat's Superman. Like, he is newer to being a superhero. He is not an all-knowing hero yet. He doesn't have the answers, and that frustrates him at times. If you look at the past history of actors playing this role, Superman in movies, the late great Christopher Reeve, Brandon Routh, and Henry Cavill, these actors had and have a hard time being recognized for anything other than playing the Man of Steel, and we are going to see if that will be the case for Corensweat. And it all has to do with the fact that when these actors were chosen to play Superman, they were virtual unknowns. Look at the actors who have played Batman, for example. Michael Keaton, Robert Pattinson, Christian Bale, Val Kilmer. These people had a long history of being in movies. They had already solidified themselves as actors. I didn't even mention George Clooney and Ben Affleck. And then on the other hand, when it comes to the actors playing Superman, the first time they become well known to the public is them playing Superman. I'm rooting for Corensweat to find success outside of playing Superman because I do believe he's a very good actor. And look, you might disagree with me if you're a fan of Henry Cavill. I personally love the movie The Man from U.N.C.L.E. He has been in good movies outside of Man of Steel. What I'm talking about, though, is being widely recognized for something that isn't playing Superman, and that has not happened for him, and it hasn't happened for Brandon Routh, who is great in the movie Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. But when you think of those two actors, you really only think about Superman. Rachel Brosnahan is well known for starring in the Amazon comedy series The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel as Midge. If you look at the actresses who have taken on the role of Lois Lane, post the late great Margot Kidder, Kate Bosworth, and Amy Adams, have not, in my opinion, been given a whole lot to do in their respective movies. Character-wise, those movies focus on the reporter aspect of the character. And that is in this movie as well, and it's done very well, but there is a different side of the character. I really like the pivotal part of the role that Lois plays in the plot. She's a more well-rounded interpretation of the character than recent adaptation. Brosnahan to me just effortlessly feels like a star. I believe she gives the performance of the movie, and because of her background, she works in the film's funny moments and in the dramatic ones as well. And this had to be said, the best thing that this movie does, in my opinion, is it does not make Lois Lane a damsel in distress. She is part of the plot. She is helping Superman. She is not at risk. She does not need to be saved multiple times by Superman. We have seen that version before. We don't need to see it anymore. And to a certain degree, you understand it, because when you think about Spider-Man, you think about him saving Mary Jane. When you think about Superman, you think about him saving Lois Lane. We get it. We've seen it. We've enjoyed it in the past, but we get the gist, and it's time to do something different, and that's exactly what the movie Superman does. I know most people were concerned concerned about how Corensweat was going to play Superman. I was more concerned about Lois Lane because I've just been bored by the recent versions of this character. Kate Bosworth is not very good. Amy Adams is one of the best actresses of her generation, and she is wasted in Man of Steel and in Batman v Superman and Justice League as well. I thought Brosnahan was an inspired choice to play the role, and it was the reason I was excited for this movie in the first place. And the biggest compliment I can give her is she even exceeded my expectations. As we all know, people have strong opinions on how actors portray Superman and Lois, but the strongest opinions always seem to come from the portrayal of one Lex Luthor, who was at first played by the late great Gene Hackman, and it's very similar to Jack Nicholson playing the Joker. It was a big deal that a great actor at that time wanted to be in a superhero movie, and both were lauded for the roles, even though they are a bit over the top in a fun way. The difference being after that, playing the Joker has won actors Oscar awards. The late Heath Ledger and Joaquin Phoenix both won golden statues for playing the Joker, while playing Lex Luthor has just gotten you polarizing media attention. I mean, we all ignore the Kevin Spacey version because he's become an afterthought. What I'm talking about is, of course, Jesse Eisenberg, one of my favorite actors, taking the mantle of Lex. I don't have the same strong feelings that most have. I think he's fine in the movie Batman v Superman, and it's the film that let him down. Really, the popular modern interpretation of this character was played by Michael Rosenbaum in Smallville. Also, shout out to voice actor Clancy Brown for voicing the role in Superman the Animated Series and Justice League. That's where my love of Lex Luthor really comes from, are Smallville and the animated versions of the character. The actor playing him in Superman is Nicholas Hoult, who is an actor who had already been in comic book movies, the X-Men First Class franchise to be exact, playing Hank McCoy, aka Beast, but was looking for a bigger role in one. He auditioned for Batman and Matt Reeves as the Batman, and for Superman in this movie, but ultimately ended up playing Lex, and he's better playing a villain role. He's a character who is angry a lot of the time and guided by jealousy of Superman. It's a very good performance. Do I wish there was more humor in his version of Lex Luthor? Yes, because I view that as the actor's greatest strength. Just watch The Great. I talked about Nicholas Holtz's co-star in Nosferatu, Aaron Taylor Johnson, on this podcast a few weeks ago, and I have similar thoughts about Nicholas Hoult. Is he as famous as he's going to be? He's been around for a while. He had the best year of his career last year. I just wonder if the attention for this role is going to propel him to be an even bigger star. Holtz's next movie is How to Rob a Bank with Zoe Kravitz, Pete Davidson, Anna Sawai, and John C. Reilly, from director David Leitch. I have never cared about the Superman sidekick character of Jimmy Olsen. That isn't until I saw he was going to be played by actor Skylar Gassando, who had a small part in the Andrew Garfield-led Amazing Spider-Man movies. I have really become a fan of his after watching the movies Class Rank in 2017, where he plays Bernard, a high-strung teen running for a position on the school board, Booksmart, playing Jared, the love interest of Beanie Feldstein's Molly, the Cat in the Moon playing Seamus, who cheats on his girlfriend in front of his friend Nick, played by Alex Wolff, Feast of the Seven Fishes, where Gassando plays Tony. This is a delightful holiday movie, and it's Skylar's best leading role to date, all in 2019, and Licorice Pizza from Paul Thomas Anderson in 2021, playing a cocky actor named Lance who goes out with Alana. In Superman, Gassando's version of Olsen is a ladies' man and is very funny. I thought it was a very good departure from the nerdy version of the character. He's wholesome in the way that Superman is as well, but in a different way. It was refreshing to see. And finally, like Nicholas Hoult, actor Eddie Gathegi was in the movie X-Men First Class playing the mutant Darwin. For Superman, the actor plays Mr. Terrific, and he's the one other superhero character in this movie I enjoyed. He fit well with the plot, and I really like the scenes between him and Rachel Brosnahan. One of the biggest reasons the recent DC movies, the two Joker movies, the Batman and now Superman, have resonated with me more than the recent Marvel movies is because those films have true authors in writer-directors Todd Phillips, Matt Reeves, and James Gunn. I like the idea of superhero movies being made by writer-directors, someone with a clear vision of what to do with an iconic character. Christopher Nolan took Batman in a brilliant direction, and then Matt Reeves took him in another one. I just want to watch a movie with a director who has creative control. James Gunn had that with the free Guardians of the Galaxy movies and the Suicide Squad. It's crystal clear after watching Superman that the writer-director had a take on where to go with the character that was different than past versions. Getting into what he did with Superman, one thought I had after watching this movie is it feels like the first modern superhero movie, and what I mean by that is it is literally touching on modern society. It's a movie that is tackling topics like social media, the state of network television and media, and U.S. foreign relations, and I find it to be very ambitious for a comic book movie to go there. How effectively it does, mileage may vary. The movie is at its best when it's simple, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't interested when it got complicated. My fatigue with the superhero movies comes from the fact that a lot of them feel the same, but Superman is a movie that stands on its own. I do have issues with the movie Superman. I don't love the addition of the Justice Gang, and the conflict with the fake countries felt odd, but the imperfect nature of this movie is interesting because I view it as bold in a lot of ways. The easiest way to put it is I don't view this movie as a movie that is playing it safe. Talking about my own history with the character of Superman, I am of the age, like I said earlier, who watched Superman the Animated Series in Smallville and like those an awful lot, but have never liked the character as much as I like Batman, Spider-Man, or the X-Men. Those superheroes are just more interesting to me. That's why I think there are so many well-known actors who want to play Batman and Spider-Man, because there's endless amounts of places to go with those characters. Then it's never felt like that for Superman. It has always felt like to me like he can only be one thing. He needs to be this Boy Scout character who just deeply cares about humanity. He's never been played as somebody who's truly complicated. And I'm not going to spoil this movie whatsoever. I just love the fact that in it, Superman's mission is put into doubt at certain points in the movie. My main point is David Corensweat is allowed to play a version of the character that is different than the other versions, because it feels like Henry Cavill's version and Brandon Routh's version are just homages to Christopher Reeves' Superman. That's what's great about this movie, is that these actors are allowed to go in new directions with these iconic characters. Like Corensweat is allowed to do his own thing with Superman, Nicholas Hoult is allowed to do his own thing with Lex Luthor, and Rachel Brosnahan is allowed to do her own thing with Lois Lane. Box office. As of this recording, Superman has made $416 million, which is good, but the problem with these superhero movies is to be viewed as a big success, at least to the public at large, they need to make $1 billion, and it doesn't seem like that's going to happen here, and I don't know what that means for the long term of these movies. What I suspect is this will be viewed as a victory, but that expectations for the sequel will rise. For example, Batman Begins made $375 million, and then The Dark Knight made $1 billion. This is when we can get into the conversation of just how popular is Superman as a character right now. Like, I think Batman is more popular. Obviously, he's more popular. Spider-Man is more popular. Iron Man has become a more mainstream superhero than Superman. And a lot of that has to do with the lack of success of the recent Superman movies. Superman Superman Returns was not viewed as a success. Man of Steel was not a success. Batman v Superman, not a success. And I would say Justice League is the low point for the character. One of the things I'm left wondering when it comes to the future of this franchise, when and if they do a sequel, is will they bring in more star power as part of the cast? Because I think that is something that these movies need. I like the fact that he hired David Corensweat, Rachel Brosnahan, and Nicholas Hoult, but these are not household names. I think that a Superman sequel would probably need to bring in an A-list star to be the villain, right? Because that's what Christopher Reeves' Superman had. It had A-listers. He was in a movie with Marlon Brando and Gene Hackman, two of the biggest actors at the time. DC is trying to compete with Marvel, who is bringing back a lot of their stars. Avengers Doomsday is going to bring back Robert Downey Jr. Chris Hemsworth is going to be in that movie. Marvel has a ton of star power on its side, and it's going to be interesting to see if James Gunn is able to bring in some star power of his own. Like, I really want to see Margot Robbie play Harley Quinn again in James Gunn's DC, and I think that's something they need to happen. They need stars like that, especially if they want to make future movies featuring David Corensweat Superman to feel like a big event. Looking into the future, this is a very good start for the new run of DC films. Again, I like the idea of these movies focusing on plot and characters. I don't really care that much about the action or the CGI. I think these just need to go back to being very good movies. That's when Marvel was at their best, and that's when DC is going to be at its best, when it is just focusing on plot and characters. Look, this is a huge victory. They got Superman right. Now the big question out there that everyone's thinking about is what on earth are they going to do with Batman? Because it appears as though they're going to have another Batman outside of Robert Pattinson's version of the character, and that could make things really confusing if those two things are happening at the same time. I, for one, do not want to see another older version of Batman. I am one of those people who did not care all that much for Ben Affleck's version of Batman. Even though he's one of my favorite actors of all time, I did not care for his work as Bruce Wayne. I want to see a younger actor play Batman. And if I'm being truthfully honest, the only actor I want to see play Batman right now is Robert Pattinson. Yes, I know it's inevitable that James Gunn is going to want to bring Batman and Superman together. My hope is that at some point, David Corensweat Superman will come across Robert Pattinson's Batman. I don't know the likelihood of that happening. It's just what I want to happen at this point in time. I don't want to be confused by multiple versions of characters. The absolute best thing DC can do right now is keep things simple. This is the guy who's playing Superman. This is the guy who's playing Batman. Get used to them. Talking about Superman characters I want to see in future movies, yes, I'd like to see Zod again. I thought Michael Shannon was great as Zod, but that's always a great character. I think he's a very interesting Superman baddie. I want to see Brainiac. I know he's a weird character. I know he's an alien robot. He's one of the best things about Superman the animated series. I want to see a live action version of Brainiac, and I think the director who could get the job done is James Gunn. He just feels like the perfect villain in a James Gunn Superman movie. Yeah, we're probably going to get Bizarro at some point. We're probably going to get Darkseid, but the real villain I want to see is Brainiac. I also wouldn't mind seeing Parasite. He was another great character in Superman the animated series. Metallo and Toyman would be cool villains as well. The problem is these characters and these villains are not as well known as the villains of Batman. The only well-known Superman villain is Lex Luthor. No matter what direction they take this character or what villain they bring in a sequel, sequel I'm excited for because I want to see David Corensweat to play Clark Kent and Superman. I want to continue to see Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane and Nicholas Hoult as Lex. This movie restored my faith in superhero movies quite a bit. Thanks for listening to this edition of Pop Culture Spotlight. I'm Cameron McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Thursday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I highly recommend you check out Superman. Next week on the podcast, I'm talking about another superhero movie, The Fantastic Four: First Steps, starring Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, Eben Moss-Backrack, and Joseph Quinn. So tune into that and please rate, review, and subscribe.